He uses art to influence positive change, and I'm sure he will share more about his background and approach during his presentation. So let's welcome Matthew.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't want to take up a lot of time. I'd rather just get into the film, and then we can talk afterwards. But I just want to say a quick thank you to Rachel for putting all this together, and the American Library Association, all of you. It's really cool to be doing these screenings and see so many people interested in abolition and in what a world can look like where we all care about one another. So today, this is our 47th screening within the last year. We've been doing community screenings all over the United States. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm looking forward to talking afterwards.
If you wish, for this part. Oh, thanks for hitting the record. Okay. So while people are thinking on that, I will ask Matthew if you want to say anything to start us off, or I will pose the first question in the Q&A.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And thanks to everybody for sticking around. And I noticed there's another Matthew Solomon, so that's always fun. Actually, that hasn't happened yet, so that's kind of cool. Yeah, I just like I said, this is our 47th screening. This project actually started as a master's in public administration as my thesis. I've been a filmmaker. I grew up in Los Angeles. I was actually a professional musician in my first part of my adult life, and found my way into filmmaking, scripted films, and things like that. And then I started working in conflict resolution. And before the pandemic, I was traveling, doing conflict resolution facilitation and workshops and seminars, and teaching people how to listen and connect and relate and create partnerships. And then when the pandemic started and we couldn't go anywhere, I went back to school. And I, at that point, thought I was done with the entertainment business. I was kind of, it was 2020, so COVID had happened. George Floyd was murdered. There was the protests and everything. And so at that point, as a white male, I wanted to be able to use my access and privilege to be able to support social change movements. Not at the front, but as a way to support and get my foot in the door, and then pass the mic, so to speak. And so I thought I was going to go into politics or policy or something. I wasn't really, for the first time in my life, I wasn't really clear what was going to happen on the other end of that program. And I was applying all of the public administration coursework around sustainability and societies and transformative leadership and things like that. I was applying all of that to the issues with policing and incarceration, and I got really interested in what are the alternatives. So when it came time to do my final thesis, one of my academic advisors was like, "We know you know how to write a paper, but we also know you're a filmmaker. Why don't you do something creative and do a documentary or something?" And I laughed because I was like, "That's a lot of work, actually." And I'm a filmmaker, so it's going to be a movie. And she said, "Well, do it anyway." And so I actually filmed the interviews on my iPhone. I got some lights. I borrowed a lavalier mic to record the sound because I knew all the elements that I needed. And I edited on my laptop, and did the assignment, turned it in, and then showed it to a group of people, some abolitionists here in LA, some friends and family, and everybody was like, "You need to put this out. People need to see this." And so at that point, I did the extra work to get really good graphics and color correction and audio mix and all of that stuff. And then I wanted it to serve the various communities. So I had the idea based on what they did with the movie 13th, which was to, go to different cities, screen the film, but then have a panel of local experts and leaders who are already doing this work, so that the audiences could connect directly with, because they're like, well, what do we do now? Well, here's the folks that you do it with. And so all of that just really kind of snowballed. And a year later, like I said, this is our 47th screening. I'm going back to Washington State in April for 4 screenings with the Black Panther Party in Washington State, and they've endorsed the film and made it part of their political education, which that was an amazing phone call to get. And then there's a lot of groups in New Jersey area that keep bringing me back. So all of this is still going on. And then, we just released on streaming services. So Amazon, Tubi, Google Play, and YouTube. And we have educational distribution through Good Docs for universities, high schools, and libraries. And so I'm really, just excited that, people are interested and sharing the film, and that it's having an impact.
It certainly is. And I think I'd like to know about some more of those impacts later, but I want to prioritize our audience members. And I do see Karen has posed a question in the Q&A, but I'd also like to invite Karen, if you wish to come off to pose it yourself, you're more than welcome to do that.
Okay, I was just wondering what people think about applying restorative justice to people who are violent perpetrators of murders, like police and political people. What is people's position about that? Because I also work with people who are, of course, opposed to police brutality and have experienced that. And they certainly don't tolerate any kind of restorative justice for police. They want them indicted and convicted. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Interesting. I mean, for me, my path to abolition through this process, because I didn't know that much about abolition itself going in. But the through line with all the interviews that I've done, and then with all the, there are over 60 organizations have hosted screenings, is that, in abolition, it centers love, it centers dignity, it centers care. And so for me, that applies to everybody. And so if we're gonna, the system that we have now is one of incarceration and all of that. But, I think that if we're going to really treat everyone with dignity and respect and care and love, that that would include, because we talk about, using that for violent offenders, if those violent offenders are police officers, and this is something that can restore the victims and restore the people who have enacted the violence and actually give them more of a sense of humanity. I mean, I think that's a necessity, honestly.
What do other people think?
Well, let's first take questions for
Yeah,
Matthew.
sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to pose any questions, raising their hand? I'm just gonna scroll through and see if I see anyone. Do not. But also and if somebody else sees that I'm missing. Oh, okay. Derek, would you like to pose your question?
Hi, wonderful film, by the way. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm amazed that you were able to do that off of an iPhone for the interviews. Yeah. That's fantastic. So my question is, why are restorative justice initiatives so difficult for people to support? Or why do you think it's so difficult for people to support there?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I think majority of people don't know about it. I didn't know about restorative justice until a few years ago, and when I was looking for a master's program that was social justice related, there's a restorative justice master's program and certificate program at Vermont College, and so that was the first time that I had really heard about it. I think, with my kids, when they were younger, they would do like community circles and things like that, which are related to restorative justice. And my kids' high school, they have a restorative justice office, but I've asked them, are you aware that that's there? Do you know what they do? And they don't. So I think the biggest problem is that people don't really know what it is and what it provides on a large enough scale.
Now, it's funny because one of my questions was going to be, give us some great examples of the violence prevention, transformative justice, and restorative justice work being done all around the country. So if you could just name a couple, and then of course, when we do share resources after the event, I'm planning to feature a lot of them too, but maybe just give us a couple.
Yeah, well, for sure, in the film it mentions Cahoots in Eugene, Oregon, and STAR in Denver, Colorado. Those are two of the most well-known that everybody seems to know about. There's Anti-Police Terror Project, APTP, in Oakland and Sacramento. And actually the Sacramento chapter not only sponsored a screening, but Keon from APTP has been on 2 other panels with me in Sacramento. In Newark, New Jersey, there's One Hood, there's Equal Justice. There's actually, we did a screening in Newark about a month or so ago. And it's really interesting there because they took 5% of the police budget and invested it into violence prevention community organizations, and crime has come down. And so there's a number of organizations there. There's the Trenton Anti-Violence Coalition that they're all doing this kind of work. That's off the top of my head, but if you Google community responders, violence prevention teams, I know that there are others out there. Like I've met people who, and actually APTP does trainings, online trainings as well, which are not, on violence prevention, on de-escalation. They've done like cop watch trainings online. So, and then there's an organization called Beyond Policing, which is a nationwide coalition. And I think they're involved in a lot of this as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask about APTP. I love their work, and was going to mention their new House of Healing that they have in Oakland and the workshops they do. So thanks for uplifting that.
Yeah.
May I
Let's see.
question, Rachel?
Yeah, please go.
Thank you. Hello, Matthew. I'm a Los Angeles public librarian. So appreciated your film because of all the Los Angeles people who were involved.
Sure.
Really great creative job. So 2 questions. One is, why do you think that Gascon, despite how decent and honorable he's been, is not getting as much support as one would think? That's number one, and then I'll ask the question.
Okay, yeah. I mean, he, so he's part of, the progressive prosecutor approach. And so it's the antithesis of how we've been socialized to handle bad guys, in quotes, conflict. When like the whole tough on crime thing that's been around since at least the 80s, probably before that. We've been inundated with the only way to keep us safe and solve crime is, more police and locking people up. And Gascon is somebody who's like, we need to not lock everybody up, and we need to have rehabilitation and things like that. So, I interviewed him it was like July or August of 2022. He had only been in office a few months, and he said that before he even took office, people were wanting to recall him and were blaming him for, the crime waves and things like that. So I think, excuse me, I think people are afraid of alternatives. It's easy to just say, we need to lock people up and be tough on crime and all of that. But it's, it's not just him. Like there was a progressive prosecutor in San Francisco, Chesa, I forget
Boudin.
last,
Boudin.
yeah, Chester Boudin, who was recalled, Larry Krasner in Philadelphia has been there for a while, and he's probably one of the most well-known prosecutors like that. But it's Gascon represents the antithesis of how we're socialized into a psychology of punishment. And so people are afraid, they don't want to deal with it. There's a big economic impact if we do things differently. The police want more money, prisons want more money. So it's all of that.
Thank you. And the second question I have is, are you in touch with people from the Los Angeles Public Library about showing your film at various branches?
I haven't been, but I would love to, especially because I live here. It'd be easy. It'd be easy for me. Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
communicate. Want me to give you my email in the?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's communicate about that.
All right. Thank you.
And I'm sure there would be other public libraries that would be more than willing to share as well. So
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
yeah, great. Okay, let's see. Anybody else live have any questions they want to pose? We have another 5 minutes or so. Well,
I have
will.
a question.
Oh yeah, Catherine.
I'm sorry. A lot of the footage looked like it was maybe from social media. And my first question is, was it? And my second question was, what role do you think social media has in documentary filmmaking, especially surrounding social movements like this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, social media is crucial for social movements. I mean, I think honestly, I think that's a big part of the reason why they want to, ban TikTok and things like that, is because it's become such a and actually Twitter, even before it was X, that was a huge platform for mobilizing actions and things like that. So I think it's crucial. It's also, if we didn't have social media and camera phones and things like that, George Floyd's murder, would have, come and gone, probably, so that regarding the other footage, yeah, it's a combination of things. And that was, one of the things with documentaries where it's like, wow, you need a whole lot of stuff to cut away to, to keep it interesting. So I filmed the B-roll, the extra footage. People in the film supplied me with stuff that they've filmed. So Senate, Mr. Checkpoint, who he actively goes out and films police interactions and was at the protests. And so he sent me stuff, and Hawk Newsom sent me stuff. And then there are like royalty-free websites or websites where you can purchase footage. And so I had to search there. So it's a combination of all of that that I put together.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I've heard criticism of cahoots, including from a cahoots worker doing self-criticism, that they did not center work against white supremacy, whereas APTP, Anti-Police Terror Project, Mental Health First, and the California Healing Justice Network center BIPOC leadership. So I'm wondering if you would please focus more on the work of APTP, Mental Health First, and the California Healing Justice Network, both in telling us more now and in your future programs and maybe future films.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was doing this, again, this was summer 2022. I wasn't aware of APTP at that point. And when I was searching for community responders, Cahoots and STAR were the ones that came up that everybody seemed to know about. So I appreciate you sharing that. I didn't know about those criticisms, and I love APTP. And absolutely. Thank you.
Well, maybe I can ask along those lines too. What have been some of the reactions to your film from people directly impacted by incarceration, state violence, police terror, and that kind of, broader vein, what some of the more challenging questions you've been posed or responses you've had
Mhm.
during your time screening.
Yeah, well, I think, well, the responses I've received, especially, people who have been impacted by the system, um, it's weird for me to say it, but what they've said to me is that they feel seen, that they're glad the film exists, that it tells their story, it tells the story, uh, and so it's a useful tool, to help educate people. The tricky thing has been when cops have seen the film. Um, Former cops tend to respond like, "Yeah, it's like that," and they're surprised that I was able to get a former police officer to say what she said. Current cops tend to push back and um, get defensive and try and pick apart the stuff that Hadia in the film, pick apart, what she was sharing, or they'll try and nitpick certain things. It was interesting though, when I was in Newark with the community responders, there were 3 officers there who work with the community responders. And all 3 of them actually were very complimentary and were like, oh, more of us need to see this. So that was interesting. I was surprised at that. But I was also told, they're not like beat cops. They work with the community response team, so their point of view is different. But that's been the most challenging though, is navigating when police are there and their responses.
Thank you. Anybody else? I do have some closing remarks I'll make just to wrap us all up, but if anyone wants to take the opportunity to pose a final question. Well, I'll pose one that might be really short. What's next? What are you working on something?
Yeah, well, right now, the film was just released on streaming services, like I mentioned. So, we're doing that and continuing to do the community impact screenings. I'm in a PhD program for transformative social change. And so I'm also deep in that, and then teaching conflict resolution at Antioch University. I do want to do a docuseries that looks at different social challenges through the lens of abolition. So, the basis being like, if we really cared about each other, how would we approach education, climate, government, relationships, things like that, but through that abolitionist lens. So, that's what I'm planning to be working on coming up.
Well, that sounds amazing, and I
Yeah.
hope you'll stay in touch with us or with
Absolutely.
me about that. I have
Yeah.
a keen interest in education in particular as a teacher. Yes. So I want to thank you for being here, and I'm just gonna give some, closing remarks for what's really been an incredible journey. And I just want to say, like, we've kind of co-created this joyous and beloved community over the last 2 days, and in my opinion, that's abolitionist work.
Yeah.
All our programming has been free. All non-ALA presenters have been well compensated. So here's to paying people for this transformative labor. I want to just offer a special thanks to all of our courageous and inspiring presenters who've shared with such openness and energy, and to thank all the people who worked behind the scenes and moderated. So Frida Avery, Rebecca Black, Olivia Blake, Mia Bruner, Catherine Hicks, Anjali Jane, Deanna Lynn Steele, Hillary Pearson, April Shepard, Derek Wilmot, and Julianne Winkelstein. And I just want to offer some remarks just to close. And I want to say, we live in a society that has strategically and surgically divested an entire communities and individual humans in ways that ripple across generations and geographies. This includes a pernicious and patently false myth of deservedness and lens of scarcity that confines and severs us from others and our own humanity. It has exacted and continues to exact spectacular degrees of harm, some of which are hidden behind prison walls, but many of which are plainly evident in our schools and on our streets in plain sight. But all too often we look away. We must find a way to create a society rooted in love of one's fellow human being, where we don't throw people away by locking them in cages or turning our backs on their needs. We must open up a heart space that includes everyone and rejects no one, and tap into our capacity to live as abundant beings who possess a resource that cannot be owned, that can never be destroyed, and can always be replenished: love. Only then will we have achieved justice, which, as Cornell West reminds us, is in fact what love looks like in public. Grace Lee Boggs said, "You cannot change any society unless you take responsibility for it, unless you see yourself as belonging to it and responsible for changing it." At the core of abolitionism is the belief that we can all change, and that the reality we inhabit can be changed if we all adopt it as a personal commitment and shared responsibility. Audre Lorde asked, "What are the words you do not have? What do you need to say? What are the tyrannies you swallow day by day and attempt to make your own until you will sicken and die of them, still in silence?" Perhaps for some of you here today, I am the face of one of your fears, because I am a woman, because I am Black, because I am a lesbian, because I am myself a Black woman, warrior, poet, doing my work. Come to ask you, are you doing yours? End quote. So I'm just going to ask all of you to please go forth and do your work, which is all of our work that is rooted in struggle and born of love. And I just want to thank you all again for making this just such a meaningful event. So thank you.
Thank you.